Good afternoon. It is an absolute delight and nightmare to stand here. Thank you for the invitation, Carolyn. I don't know what I did to you, but I'm going to take the stage anyway. It's a very difficult topic to talk about in this country, still. Reconciliation. We've been speaking reconciliation for a long time. And maybe therein lies the problem, that we've been speaking reconciliation. And so our theme for this particular award, Living Reconciliation, I believe is ACT. The time for talking is over. We need to start living the change that we want to see. It's important that when one goes through a process of change, that you go through all the experiences, the highs and the lows that come with that change. And all the emotions that go with it. Fear, anger, questioning and all of that. But you have to reach a stage where you decide that whether I like it or not, this is the new reality. And I have to live this reality. And so I come from a generation, and I'm giving my age away, where what's happening today, we couldn't even dream of. We dreamt of freedom. We never dreamt that in my lifetime, we would talk about reconciling a country. And so in the work that we do in the Building an Inclusive Society program, we are the program that works at the coalface. We work with people in communities on the ground. And our participants and partners tell us, and particularly those from marginalized sections of communities, they repeatedly tell us that they cannot eat reconciliation. They repeatedly tell us that reconciliation doesn't pay the rent or decent wages. And for many people in this country, reconciliation is just that, another word. But until reconciliation gets translated as a concept into the reality of people's lives and change their lived realities, then it becomes meaningful. There was a book out recently, and a colleague and I went to the launch, and it's called Nation Formation and Social Cohesion. It's an inquiry into the hopes and aspirations of South Africans. And one of the comments they make in this book is this, that one of the good things that makes South Africa unique and stable, I guess, is the fact that we have a single economic, legal, and education system. And those are fundamental systems for a country to do well. But that is contradicted by searing economic, land, and education divisions. And so on paper, we're doing well. In reality, we are not doing so well. And so it is really amazing that we're celebrating an organization that is giving us the lead in terms of what it means to live reconciliation. So let me just share 3 personal thoughts with you on how I see living reconciliation. And part of it is based on the work that we do. We have a project called Education for Reconciliation, where we work with education officials, teachers, and to a lesser degree learners. And at the moment we're busy with a project, a UNESCO project called Teaching Respect for All. And last year we had a session with senior officials from the basic Department of Education, and we asked a simple question. How do we explain the blockages that we have in education? How do we explain the fact that percentage-wise we spend more on education than all of the other countries in Africa and many other countries that are regarded as first world? But why is it that we don't get the dividend? Why is it that we don't get the return commensurate with the investment we make in education? And so we decided that one of the things that we need to do, if we are serious about reconciliation, is to not just look at what others need to do, but to challenge our teachers and our education officials in terms of what it is we are not doing. And part of living reconciliation is to have the honest and frank conversation about the things in our country that is holding reconciliation back. And one of those frank conversations has to be around education. And we glibly talk about a crisis in education. But I think we are not completely honest when we say that, because we do not have a crisis in education. We have a crisis in black education. And I use the word black generically here. Our struggling schools are not in the previously white suburbs. Our struggling schools are on the Cape Flats. Our struggling schools are in the townships. And the sooner we face and recognize that, the sooner we'll be able to deal with what it is that's keeping us back. And so we can throw a lot of answers at this. And for a long time, we could justifiably say that resources is a problem. But increasingly, that argument doesn't hold water anymore. Because enough money is available. Well, how that money is spent, that's another question. But there's enough money available. And so when we challenge teachers, one of the texts that we work with is an article written by Bishop Peter Lee, and he's the Anglican Archbishop bishop responsible for education. And he wrote a very, very telling article a few years ago. And he talks about the effect of Bantu education on our present education system. And you can imagine the response we get from teachers when we just ask that question. Is Bantu education still alive? And of course the answer is no. Go and look at the statute books. It's not there. Is it dead? I think not. If you go to most of our struggling schools and you see what happens in those schools, then Bantu education is alive and well. Because Bantu education has as its very root the concept, the notion that we shouldn't give black people excellence. We should just give them enough to get by and to live mediocre lives. And sadly, that is what's happening in many of our struggling schools. And in a way, Bantu education has become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, it's not as simple as I'm putting it here, but it is something that we will have to confront if we want to live reconciliation in this country. And so I really want to speak to you on this important thing, important question. Who is standing up for the next generation? Because you and I see most of us are adults, the way we go about with the reconciliation narrative really has to do with where we come from and our baggage and all of that. And often we don't realize that what we do today has far-reaching implications for the next generation. And we dare not have another generation of young black children growing up feeling that they don't belong, feeling that they are not able to fulfill their potential. That is a recipe for disaster. And so people say, it's 20 years. Why can't we just move on until the material circumstances of people, and in this case, our young black learners, are changed? We cannot stop reconciliation. We have to do it for the sake of our children. And in order to live reconciliation that has effect for the next generation, we need to tackle and to talk openly about the roots of some of the problems we have in our education. And the recipient of today's award is a fine example of what can happen if we put our hands together and we live reconciliation in our own quiet and very simple way. Let me talk broader about the next generation, because that's really what I want to talk about. We don't do reconciliation for ourselves, because if we do, then we are selfish. We need to do reconciliation for the next generation. And one of the things that I believe is important for us to do in order to live reconciliation is to reduce the stress levels in our society. We are a very, very stressed society. Doesn't matter where you live. Fear is the one common denominator. And it's almost sad that one has to say this, but as I was driving here, I had my jacket hanging at the back of my car. And as I crossed Fifth Avenue, I took my jacket off and put it on the seat because I thought this is too much of an invitation. And the point I'm making is simply this. It's an indication of our levels of stress. I don't need to tell you this. We all have this. Now just imagine, we have young people growing up who fear the other. And sometimes it's legitimate, but we have been socialized to fear the other. And that brings about a lot of stress. Now some stress is good. I mean, the stress that I felt before coming up and the stress that I'm still feeling is a positive stress. You know, it kind of gets the juices, creative juices flowing. And so positive stress is good. And sometimes we go through difficult periods, difficult events, and we get through it, and that is tolerable stress, because you know it's not forever. But if you are stressed every day, that's toxic stress. And when our young people grow up in an environment of toxic stress, and they experience toxic stress every day of their lives. There's a grade 11 learner that was hacked to death the other day. Everywhere there's this toxic stress. Just imagine what it is we're handing over to the next generation. And in order to live reconciliation, all of us need to do our bit to reduce the toxic stress. Because you know what toxic stress does? It creates chronic disease, it creates chronic dysfunction, and it also damages or inhibits somebody's ability to function normally. I grew up in the era of no normal sport in an abnormal society. We are back to the abnormal society. This time it's a different abnormality. And dare I say that if we do not actively work at reducing stress levels in our society, toxic stress levels, we are creating a platform for destruction. We already have an angry generation. I don't need to tell you that. And so, in standing up for our children, standing up for the next generation, you know, what you're going to hear about Partnership for Possibilities today is exactly the point that I want to make now, and that is that when there is supportive, responsive relationships by caring adults, we can prevent more damage. And sadly, because we are so stressed, and because we don't have ways to deal with our stress, we just transfer that onto the next generation. And you and I need to live reconciliation in order to also reduce that stress. I'm committed to doing that. Because you know what? Just like there are thousands of people who can stand up and say that because of Partnership for Possibilities, you know, I'm a better person. I am here because somebody stood up for me. Somebody decided to make me an interest. Somebody, my principal called me after I left school, which was then standard 9, and working already, asking me, why are you not at school? And saying, in his own simple way, how important it is for me to be at school. I went back to school, and here I am today. And there are hundreds and thousands of stories like that. I'm committed. What about you? I leave you with a quote from Arundhati Roy, who is famous for writing the book, The God of Small Things. And this is what she says, and I quote, "The trouble is that once you see it, you can't unsee it." That's our challenge. We see it. And once you've seen it, keeping quiet, saying nothing, becomes as political as speaking out. There is no innocence. Either way, you are accountable. Let's take up the challenge. And let's stand up for the next generation by living reconciliation. Thank you very much.